Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of uh, Market Navigator. My name is Abhishek Singhal. I head the passive business and alternate strategies for Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. Today, we are presenting a very interesting topic of discussion and a freewheeling chat between two very interesting personalities. We have Mr. Anup Bhaiya. Mr. Anup Bhaiya is the founder of Money Honey Financial Services. His professional track record is very outstanding. He started his career in 2000 with IIFL and stayed with them till 2007. In May 2008, he founded Money Honey Financial Services Private Limited. He is one of the pioneers in the retail market investments in financial services business and caters to over 4 lakh retail investors now in a span of over 21 years of his career. He set up one of the largest network of retail investments in the country. Welcome, Anup sir. So along with Anup sir is our stalwart, Mr. Vinod Bhatt. Mr. Vinod Bhatt is the portfolio manager and equity strategist at Aditya Birla Sun Life AMC. He manages all our fund of funds, international investments, and the macro and equity strategy. He comes with a very solid track record of 2 decades of experience, most recently with the corporate strategy team of Aditya Birla Group. And prior to that, his education background includes an MBA in finance from Wharton in US and a BTech in mechanical engineering from IIT Mumbai, and he's also a CFA. Welcome Anup and Vinod. Today we are discussing a hot topic, a very contemporary topic, and something that you might want to really dwell on and act on if you haven't done already. Over the last few years, maybe this entire decade, we've seen not only the Indian markets but the global markets metamorphose into a very different sort of animal. Every year we've seen the color changing, and almost every year we've seen the leaderboard changing in terms of asset classes. There was a time when we used to talk about इतना पैसा इक्विटी में डाल दीजिए, इतना पैसा डेट में डाल दीजिए, 10 साल लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट करिए, अच्छा रिटर्न आ जाएगा. बट टुडे यू कैन नॉट रिलाई ऑन द एज ओल्ड विजडम ऑफ इतना फिक्स एसेट एलोकेशन करके रखना. And which is where our fund manager, Mr. Vinod Bhatt, is the portfolio manager and equity strategist, and Anup Bhaiya represents the advisor voice. His experience talks about managing money for lakhs and lakhs of investors. Given the backdrop of the last maybe 5-7 years, where Indian markets have been some of the best performing markets, like in the current year, as well as having been one of the worst markets where international equities or gold or fixed income has been on the leaderboard. What is the role of international equities today in your portfolio? What is the importance of having this diversification? And if it is really important, let's find out if it is important. And if it is important, how do you go about building this portfolio? So we have on one side somebody who manages money for lakhs of investors in the country, advising them on a day-to-day basis. And on the other side, somebody who is managing the trust of one of the largest asset managers, somebody who is managing international exposures as well as asset allocation in the portfolios itself. Over to you, Anup sir.
Hey, thank you, Abhishek. I think thanks for your kind introduction. Thank you. So I think it's an interesting topic, and there are a couple of observations why this topic is very imminent in current context. So I'll give you 2 examples. One is very within my family examples. My first cousin, his daughter just graduated from her engineering, and post that she spent some time, did some work, and after that she suddenly went for a MBA, and she did MBA from a international college. And obviously this is my first cousin because I know him very closely. He haven't planned for his education. Obviously he had planned for education for domestic, but never planned for the internationals. And I know that how painful for him to organize funds and other things, because the cost got elevated substantially. Second, it was just observation, maybe a couple of days before only. like you look at today's context, the number of names, the foreign names, what we take in our daily routines, maybe you can call it Amazon or maybe Zoom meetings or a Netflix if you are watching something. It was the same, like maybe 20, 30 years before, we may be having Tata, Bajaj, Mahindra. Those were the names were more popular in our homes. Those are not there today. To keep those things in context in my mind, I think it's very important to spend time here and try and understand, like more nuances in and around this international space, how important this space in the client's portfolio. To give you in context, like we have close to around 45 to 50 mutual fund schemes in the mutual fund industry who are in the international space, managing close to around asset under advice 15,000 crore plus. Obviously, there are more majority of the funds are on the FOF side, and only 6 or 7 funds are the active fund size. So give you in that context, let's start this conversation. And we have, I think, is a close friend of mine, and I think who comes with the decades of rich experience. Mr. Vinodji is also here, like to help us and to decode this space. So Vinodji, I think my first question or probably thoughts is there in my mind. Like, see, in last couple of years, this international space is buzzing. And most of the AMCs now have these schemes in their portfolio. So can you give your perspective in terms of how international investing is important, and how do you think, how do you compare with the domestic market versus the international market?
Sure. Since you started with an example from your family, even I was reminded of an interesting development in my own family. Like over the past year and a half, because of COVID, so we have seen so many changes in our life. Like for example, all our meetings are now come online. All our entertainment is online. Education of our kids has gone online. Shopping is online, right? So what has happened is, like if I look in my family, my mom, who is 72 years old, my wife and my daughter, 3 generations of Indians now are much more aware of foreign companies like Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Facebook, you name them. They know their names, they know what those companies do, how much impact they have on our lives, and more so than maybe even some of the Indian companies, right? So the big change that has happened over the past year and a half is that earlier, international investing used to be seen as something that was really very exotic. मतलब हमें पता नहीं है ये companies क्या करती है, risk बहुत ज़्यादा है, तो हम इससे थोड़ा दूर ही रहना चाहते हैं, right? So we never used to get traction from investors with regards to looking at international investments. But given the experience over the past year and a half, and given that everybody now understands these companies, their business models, how much impact they have on their life, how innovative they are, investors want these companies in their portfolio. So that's the dramatic change we have seen, right? And the key reason for that is, these companies give us access to themes that are not available in India. So whether it's like, artificial intelligence and machine learning and its applications, whether it's robotics, right? Or whether it's genomics and digital health, digital education, internet, e-commerce, and so on. India is still a few years behind the rest of the world. We are seeing some companies coming for IPOs now, and we'll see more of that over the next 3 to 5 years. But on a relative basis, we are still some time behind, for example, what's happening in US, Europe, and China, and so on. So these companies give us access to those themes and to the disruptive innovation which is not yet available in India. So that's point number 1. The second point is, when we invest in international stocks, we get different kinds of diversification. So first is the economic diversification. So as we know, different economies are in different cycles. So for example, when we came out of COVID, China was the first to recover. Then it was the US, then Europe, and other Asian countries, and India now recovering after them. Right? So different economies are in different cycles. Also, we have seen that different geographies have their own strength. The US is very good in advanced technology, China in mass manufacturing, Europe in advanced manufacturing, and so on, right? And India in services. So as an investor, we want to make sure that we have exposure to these different economies and geographies. And lastly, of course, is the currency diversification. So we have seen that on an average, the rupee has been depreciating at around 2.5% to 3% per year. over the past decade, and that is expected to continue going forward. So in the example you gave, if your cousin had invested in international stocks, let's say 5 years or 10 years back, the portfolio would have appreciated, and of course he wouldn't have to worry about the currency depreciation also. So that's the other advantage. And lastly, I'd like to reiterate the point that Abhishek made in the beginning in terms of the asset allocation. If you look at the past 5 years also, right, we have seen different asset classes doing well in different points in time. So last year during COVID, gold was the best performing asset class. Before that, it was international equities. Before that, domestic equities. Before that, fixed income, and so on, right? So it's important to have international exposure as part of the portfolio because it reduces the overall portfolio volatility and it increases the chance of getting a better risk-adjusted return. So keeping all these aspects in mind, we have seen increasing interest from investors to take international exposure, and that's why we have seen that all the fund houses have come out with their products giving that exposure to investors.
I think nicely touched upon. I think this the diversification aspect in terms of as an economic diversification, as a currency diversification, or as a geographical diversification, maybe a style diversification. There are a lot of diversification come into the picture. But if you look at in the current era, what we are witnessing not only in India but globally also, these Robinhood sort of investors or DIY sort of investors. Now, what's your own perspective in terms of there are options are available like Stockle or Globalize or Investa, where somebody can go and directly buy and purchase. And interestingly, you can in India those options are not available, where you can buy in decimal also. But at least if you can go in the international market, that option is available. So what's your own perspective in terms of why look at a mutual fund route rather than a do it investors, DIY sort of route? Right?
Sure. Yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon you have pointed out. And just today morning, I attended a session by one of the founders of Zerodha, and they highlighted an interesting trend which they have seen ever since their company was founded. That whenever the stock markets do well, they see an influx of new investors who open accounts at Zerodha and who do a lot of trading. And as soon as there is a market correction, then most of these investors or traders vanish, right? And then the next time again, when the market picks up, there's a rally, again, there's a new set of traders or investors who creates their accounts and start trading, right? And that's what we are seeing, like, over the past year and a half, equity markets have been doing very well, whether in India or internationally, right? So if we see, for example, even the year-to-date returns, in dollar terms also, Nifty has given about 27% returns, and which is among the best performing markets globally. And even the US markets have given between 17 to 20% returns, right? So given those kinds of returns, naturally, there are many new investors and traders who want to try their hand at investing, especially youngsters. And they have all come into the market, and we are seeing this phenomenon not just in India. It's happening in the US, like you mentioned with Robinhood. It's happening in China. It's happening in the Asian countries. And most of these new investors have been able to make good returns over the past year. The question, and this was the same feedback provided by the Zerodha founder, that the biggest question is what happens if there is a market correction, right? Either this month, next month, the next 3 months, whatever, right? Then what will we see? And going by past experience, most of the people get burnt, they burn their hands and then they stay away from the markets for some time, right? So this is what we are seeing, that typical retail mindset is invest when the market is doing well. So typically they come in at high levels, and whenever the market corrects, most of them panic and sell at the lows, right? So instead of buying low and selling high, they end up buying high and selling low. And this is the exact opposite of what an investor should truly do in the markets. And that's where the mutual funds come in to bring in that discipline. And the whole idea is that, as an investor, I should invest in periodic amounts. SIP is the best way to do it, irrespective of the level of the market, so that, I don't get affected by any of the biases, right? So typical, like I mentioned, I feel very happy when the market is doing well. I want to invest more money when the market is doing well. And I panic when the market corrects and I want to exit at that time, right? So these are all biases that we have. It's very difficult to overcome these emotional biases, and the mutual funds help to overcome those biases and bring in that discipline. So whether one is investing in domestic equities, fixed income, international equities, or gold, I would definitely recommend that the mutual fund is a better option for investors, especially to keep their life simple. Like everybody has a core competency. Everybody, for example, is doing their job or running a business or managing the household and so on. And if they want, they can keep some amount for dabbling in the markets. But to generate wealth, truly, it takes a very disciplined approach over a long period of time. And in that sense, mutual funds are the ideal product for investors, whether they're investing in domestic equities or international equities.
और एक क्वेश्चन था मेरे मन में विनोद जी कि ये इंटरनेशनल फंड्स आर नॉट न्यू, ऑलमोस्ट लाइक 2008 में जब ग्लोबल फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस हुआ था उसके बाद से अगर हम देखें तो काफी सारे इंटरनेशनल फंड्स ऑलरेडी अवेलेबल है
जी।
सो सम पर्सपेक्टिव कि किस तरीके का उनका परफॉर्मेंस रहा है, how these funds have done, even having a long history, like we have almost like a 10-12 years of history.
Right. So if we see that 12 years have passed since the global financial crisis in 2008-9, and if you look at the data, the returns of the international funds that are there in the market, and you compare that to the domestic market, let's say the returns from the Nifty, it's surprising in one aspect and it's not so surprising in another aspect, right? So the data shows that, for example, the Nifty has given about 11 to 12% CAGR return over the past 12 years. Okay, and if you look at the data from the international mutual funds, the returns, the average return is also 11 to 12%, right? So in a sense, it's very surprising that we think that international markets maybe are very different from Indian markets. So either we'll get a very high return or a very low return, but that is not so, right? And we are seeing that the returns are similar. And the reason for that, again, goes back to the first point on diversification. So what has happened over the past decade is, Indian markets have done well at different periods in time. International markets have done well in different periods in time. But the stock markets never move linearly, right? And typically we have seen that's the expectation from many retail investors, that when they invest, they expect that the stock market will grow linearly and they will see good returns, during every period, like every 3 months, 6 months, or every year. But it doesn't work like that. So typically you will see, for example, if we get, let's say, positive 15 to 20% return this year, we may get a negative 10% return the next year and so on, right? And over time that averages out. And typically we have seen that markets on average have given about 11 to 12% kind of a CAGR return over the past decade at least. Now the difference there is, if I take any specific fund, for example, if I take the NASDAQ index in the US, that gives a different picture. So over the past decade, it has given almost a 25% return in rupee terms and a 20% return in US dollar terms, right? But it's not fair to just look at one index. That's why I looked at the average returns from these different funds that are there in the market, and they compare, they're similar to the returns from the Nifty, for example.
So I'll come to that, maybe the indices, maybe NASDAQ and other indices, right? But I have one, like whenever I had spoken to you or maybe other fund managers within the Birla Group, there is a good amount of thrust is there on the building this international exposure. So how do you recommend building this exposure in the portfolio? Like why do you think, which one is maybe correct way, active managed schemes or a passive managed schemes? And if passive, why?
Sure. So अगर हम देखते हैं, मतलब मार्केट में इतने सारे प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, like you mentioned, and every product has a different flavor. So for example, there are some international funds which are more diversified. So they invest across geographies, they invest across market caps, okay, and they invest in some established companies, and they may also invest in some new or the next generation companies, right? So these are the active funds where the fund managers are trying to understand what's going on in the international markets and select stocks for the portfolio. Or these may be international fund of funds where the fund house has tied up with an international partner and the fund of fund invests in that active mutual fund run by the partner, right? But the idea is, just like the domestic fund managers do here, identify stocks that can perform better than the index, right? So those are the active international mutual funds, and they may be diversified or they may provide exposure to a particular theme or to a particular geography. So, for example, there are some international funds that are focused on China. There are funds that are focused on China technology or US technology and so on, right? Or there are some like a diversified technology funds. So these are all active funds. Another type of funds are the passive funds and the passive fund of funds, right? So these, for example, invest in ETFs and index fund of funds. So either the Nasdaq 100 ETF or fund of index, or the S&P 500 ETF or index, and so on. And the difference is, just like we have the Nifty ETF here, the Nasdaq ETF or the S&P 500 ETF invest only in the companies that are present in that index, right? So the transparency there is higher in terms of, the investor knows which companies the ETF is investing in. The cost is also lower, again, because these funds are not actively managed. So in comparison to the actively managed international funds, the cost is lower. And overall, it becomes a much more simpler from both the fund manager's point of view as well as from the investor's point of view, in terms of making the actual investment, tracking it, knowing what are the underlying stocks and so on. So for example, if I, as an investor, invest in an international active mutual fund, then sometimes I may not know, like if I see the portfolio, I may not know some of the companies or what they are doing. Whereas if I invest in a passive fund or a ETF like the Nasdaq ETF, S&P 500 ETF, then I know, which companies broadly, because these are all very well-known names, well-established companies. So that gives a better sense of comfort to the investors.
So just to continue that, now why Nasdaq? Right? So that you have options for, let's suppose, S&P 500 or a MSCI World Index or MSCI All Country World Index. So can you throw some perspective why you chosen Nasdaq 100 as an ETF?
Yeah. So what we have seen globally as well as in India, when it comes to, for example, large caps or more diversified kind of exposure, more and more it's becoming difficult for active fund managers to beat the indices, right? And that happens at different points in time. So it depends on the nature of the market also. So in the US, we have seen already that that has happened to a large extent, where in the large cap or the diversified space, the indices are beating the active fund managers. In India, we are still yet to reach that point because the Indian market is still inefficient. But we saw, for example, in the 2019-2020 period, when the market was very polarized, the Nifty ETF was beating the active funds. This year is a bit different. The market has broadened, market breadth has widened, so the active fund manager are again beating the indices, but it varies with time, right? So from an investor's point of view, especially if you want to get international exposure, and if you want to get diversified exposure, then it makes sense to look at the passive route, right? Like I mentioned, either the Nasdaq 100 ETF, for example, because it's simpler, you understand what the underlying investments are, and the cost is also lower than compared to an active international mutual fund. So that's the first point. Second is, if you look at the Nasdaq 100 index itself, it's a very interesting composition. Now it's a large cap index, and it has the well-established names. If you see the very well-known brands, so you have, for example, more than 50% weightage is to the technology and digital space, the disruptors and innovators as we know them: Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Netflix, and so on. So you'll find all these names there. It has about 20% plus allocation to the consumer space, and the rest of the allocation is, for example, to the healthcare, telecom, and so on, right? So it gives a very well-diversified exposure, but it's focused more on the disruptive innovators, which are largely found in the technology space. And these are also the higher growth companies. Second is, the Nasdaq doesn't have exposure to, for example, financial companies, because many times they are highly leveraged, and we have seen what can happen when companies are leveraged. So it avoids that exposure. It doesn't have a lot of exposure to energy, industrials, materials, and so on. And so, slightly the returns are not that correlated to, for example, the economy and so on. So that diversification is also there. The other aspect is that, the companies in the Nasdaq are typically very much focused on research and development, like I mentioned, because these are the innovators and disruptors. So if you see the R&D spend of many of the companies in the Nasdaq, that's more than 10-15% of the revenue compared to 1 or 2% for most of the companies, right? So these are the companies that one would like to invest if we are taking like a 5-year, 7-year, 10-year horizon, as they are investing in innovation and they have a higher chance of being around in 5 to 10 years. And lastly, like I mentioned, if you look at the returns also, like over the past decade, the Nasdaq 100 index has given a 20% return plus in US dollar terms and a 25% return in rupee terms, right? So it's much more than, for example, what the diversified market has given or even the domestic market has given. So these are some of the reasons why we thought that, the Nasdaq 100 index would be an ideal investment for Indian investors who are looking to get international exposure.
I agree. I think I totally agree. Even if you can add like this Nasdaq comes is a non-leverage index. Like there is no financials are there. And I'm sure that will help in terms of lower volatility. Is that what's your view on that? So is that basically help you in terms of lower volatility to that index?
Exactly. Yeah, you brought out the point very well. We have seen, for example, in 2008, जैसे हमने देखा जब global financial crisis हुआ था, the financials were very badly impacted. Even during COVID, see what happens is whenever there's a slowdown in the economy, typically the industrials, materials, financial companies tend not to do well because they are very tied to the economy. Like, जैसे हम बोलते हैं, credit is like the lifeblood of the economy, right? If the economy has to work, then the credit flow has to happen. But if it doesn't happen, then the financial companies get impacted. Since they are highly leveraged, they get more negatively impacted than the rest of the companies in the universe, right? So leverage can work both ways. When it works well, it can give good returns, but when it doesn't, then kind of it amplifies the negative returns or the performance of the companies also. And that's why it's, from a volatility point of view, it's very good that the Nasdaq index doesn't have financial companies.
And the kind of sector it represents, almost like a telecom or a consumer discretionary or a communication, all these companies are largely cash generating company without leverage, good governance, and sustainable growth. Like they may not give you very high growth, but it's a sustainable growth. And that's matter.
Exactly. And as an investor, if as an Indian investor, if I'm looking to get international exposure, there are the two basic criteria which we look at. One is the returns, and the second is the risk. And nowadays, there's a third aspect of ESG, right? Environmental, social, and corporate governance. So from all these angles, if I see the composition of the Nasdaq, like I mentioned, these are the well-known brands, the companies that we know. These companies have been around for a couple of decades, so they have a solid track record. The financials are very good, like extremely strong balance sheet, high cash flows, very good profitability. And lastly, from an ESG point of view, also, these companies stand out. Like since, like I mentioned, these are mainly 50% of the weightage is to the tech and digital space. These companies stand out on the ESG norms. Also, corporate governance is good. And given that these are large caps, so the risk is also lower. So, from all angles, kind of these satisfy the checklist of a domestic investor.
और एक इम्पोर्टेंट या थोड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग एस्पेक्ट है कि जैसे हमने पहले बचपन में हमारे पेरेंट्स से सीखा और बाद में जब हम like when we are got into this business and when we meet most of the fund managers, they also give so parents and the fund manager give one thing कि बाजार में जाओ, पहले देखो, 4 जगह जाओ, देखो क्या चीज सस्ती है, मतलब like relatively valuations are extremely important. ठीक है. अब उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट को अगर हम देखते हैं तो एटलीस्ट लास्ट, जैसे आपने भी बताया कि like डॉलर डिनोमिनेटेड टर्म्स में लास्ट 10 साल अगर हम देखते हैं ग्लोबल फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस के बाद में यूएस हैड डिलीवर ऑलमोस्ट 20% रिटर्न, इंडिया डिलीवर ऑलमोस्ट half of, like close to around 10% sort of returns. Rupee denominated, it has even the US done reasonably well. Now, where do you see valuations? Like if you can just throw some light and give that comfort to us.
Right. तो ये valuations का सवाल जो है वो अभी investors के माइंड में सबसे बड़ा सवाल है. Whether it's Indian markets or global markets, if we see the data points, so अगर हम US market का price to earning multiple देखते हैं, तो it's almost like 30 to 32% premium to the long term average. Europe is around 25% premium to long term average. Emerging markets around 22% premium to long-term average. And even India, if we see the Nifty's price to earning multiple, that is also around 30-35% premium to the long-term average. So if you look at headline valuations, हम यही बोलेंगे कि market valuations are elevated, market seems very expensive. लेकिन if we go to the next level of analysis जो हमें करना चाहिए, so we should understand that over the past year and a half, earnings have not been normalized because of COVID. Okay, and even over the next 6 months to a year, the earnings are not still normalized. Okay, so it's only in FY23 that we expect, for example, Nifty earnings to be normalized. Same is the case for the US, Europe, or the other Asian emerging markets, right? So, अगर हम headline valuation देखते हैं, तो that is not giving a correct representation of where the market is, right? Because the base, which is the earnings, is not normalized. तो हम क्या करते हैं कि we prefer to look at 1 year or 2 year forward multiples. Like I said, by FY23, the economies would have normalized, so earnings growth would also have normalized. So if we look at FY23 earnings, for example, and then if you look at the price to earnings, price to book on the yield gap ratio and so on, so we see that the premium is not that high. Actually, the markets are trading close to the long-term averages. That means that valuations are reasonable. Right, so as investors, our recommendation has been that don't go just by the headline valuations. Do one more level of analysis. Look at 1 year or 2 year forward multiples when things would have normalized, and there you will see that the valuations seem reasonable. And then from that point of view, one need not be afraid of investing in equities at this, even at this point in time.
Thank you. So, Phil, if that is the case, then why not look at US equity? Why look at Nasdaq 100? Right.
So, see, if we see, if I also cover, like Abhishek mentioned, the macro and equity strategy for our team. So, I track all the global metrics, and if we see what is happening globally, right now we are seeing that global markets are what we call trying to climb a wall of worry on different fronts. Okay, so एक तो है जैसे inflation is rising because of higher oil and gas prices, supply chain disruptions हो रहे हैं, labor costs बढ़ रहे हैं US में and in other countries, right? So because of that, inflation is rising. Second worry is the expected Fed tapering. So Fed has said that they will start tapering their bond purchases in November and end it by the middle of next year. And the first rate hike might happen at the end of 2022 calendar year, right? Third is there are expected, for example, that the corporate tax rate in the US may be increased from 21.5% to around 25%. Recently, there is news that even there'll be a global minimum corporate tax for all companies and so on, right? And lastly, there is some uncertainty in China also. We have seen the real estate sector taking a hit, a lot of regulatory action from the Chinese government or different sectors and so on. So that is causing a lot of uncertainty in markets. So that's all. These are some concerns that the market is trying to overcome. On the positive side, to balance it out, हम जो देख रहे हैं कि COVID का जो crisis है, that is almost kind of reduced now. Whether it's in India or in other countries, the COVID cases are on a declining trend, and all the economies are showing a good recovery, right? So as an investor, हमारा काम क्या है कि ये जो factors जो मैंने बताए, उसमें से हमें differentiate करना पड़ेगा कि कौन से structural changes है which can really impact the market over a long term, and कौन से transient factors है basically, right? So if you do that analysis, for example, if you look at inflation, even the US Fed has said that the inflation is seen to be transitory. So it's going to be high for some time till, for example, the first quarter of 2022, but then it will go down, right? So they have clearly said that they will start the tapering in November. They're giving clear timelines, and they have said that there is no rush to raise interest rates. So compared to, for example, 2013, when the Fed tapering caused a big scare, this time the Fed has given much more visibility, and they are trying to calm markets down, right? And they have also given the timeline for the rate hikes. So this is all priced in the markets currently, right? So this is not expected to kind of shock the markets as such. And even on the China front, of course, we expect that uncertainty to continue, and that's why we are seeing that the developed markets like the US seem a safer option than investing in some emerging markets like China. Right now, given all these factors, we are seeing that the US market has been very resilient, right? So despite of everything that I mentioned, the Nasdaq or the S&P 500 are still at all-time highs, right? And that is expected to continue going forward. Now, like I mentioned, from a diversification point of view, it makes sense to invest in international markets, especially the US. And coming to your question of why Nasdaq versus a broader US market, like I mentioned, the composition of the Nasdaq is giving us a slightly different exposure, right? So, for example, the S&P 500 index is composed of 500 companies, which is much more balanced towards the US economy, right? So it has more representation of industrials, materials, energy companies, financials, and so on. Whereas the Nasdaq has more exposure of the disruptive innovators, more exposure to the tech and digital space, which we are seeing like investors are more familiar with. So that's why we have preferred to go with the Nasdaq than with the broader, for example, the S&P 500 index.
तो अभी हम बेसिकली Nasdaq के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं.
जी.
Okay. So if I just take that point from him, and if I ask the same question, what is the direction you look at on the interest rate? You gave all reasons, like your all commodity prices are rising, oil is rising, inflation is rising, and obviously, and you have not smartly touched upon interest rate. So if you can give us some direction, I'm sure it everybody.
Right. So clearly, we all know now that interest rates are going to be on a rising trend going forward, right? So all the central banks, whether it was the Fed, the ECB, Bank of China, Bank of Japan, Bank of England, RBI in India, for the past year and a half, they wanted to support the market growth. So they had made ample liquidity available and reduce interest rates to all-time lows. And the US interest rates are close to zero. Europe, they are negative and so on, right? Now, given that, like I said, COVID crisis is reducing, economies globally are recovering. So now it makes sense for the central banks to start focusing on inflation and try to control that. And given, that is the case, they are expected to raise rates. Now, the difference between now and earlier periods is that the central banks are being very cautious and being very clear in their communication, and they're trying to calm the markets down instead of spooking them. So typically, equity markets की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो interest rates work in two ways. Okay, if inflation rises dramatically, if there's a spike in inflation which causes a rapid increase in interest rates, then that is negative for equity markets. Okay, because it starts impacting the valuations very quickly. But if inflation is on a gradual rising trend, and because of that, then the central banks start increasing interest rates slowly, then it is not so negative for equity markets. Actually, we always say that some bit of inflation is always good for equity markets because that helps the top line of the companies, right? And the current expectation is that, like I said, all the central banks are being very clear in their communication. They're giving clear timelines. The Fed has also said that the first rate hike will be at the end of 2022. Almost, there's still a year to go. And other central banks will take the cue from the Fed and they will raise rates as and when the Fed starts raising rates. But it's going to be a gradual process. So from an equity investor's point of view, there is no concern as such. So interest rates will rise. Because of that, of course, we are already seeing that is being priced into the valuation. So even in the technology sector, there are two kinds of companies. So on the one hand, we have established companies, जैसे जो हम सब जानते हैं, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Netflix, Facebook. These companies are established companies. They have good business models, very strong cash flows, strong balance sheets, right? So if you see, their valuations have not been as negatively impacted in the past 2-3 months, even after the Fed has started talking of tapering and so on. But there's another category of technology companies. These are maybe the newer names, smaller names, where they are less profitable. The cash flows are well into the future. And for those companies, जब interest rates बढ़ता है, तो उनका valuation कम होता है. And we are seeing that in the technology space, investors are exiting the second category of companies where the visibility to the profitability is lower, and they are sticking to these large cap names where the visibility to the profitability and cash flows is higher. And that's what happens. Whenever there's an increase in interest rates, people prefer to invest in companies that have cash flow and earnings visibility in the near term rather than in the far out future.
Thank you. So we are talking on Nasdaq, but is the only Nasdaq? Are we missing in the world some formidable other geographies also? Let's say suppose China or Taiwan or maybe Japan or South Korea, anything?
Yeah, of course. See, I mean, the US is the leader in advanced technologies, but that doesn't mean other countries are not catching up, right? So every country and geography has its strengths, like I mentioned in the beginning. Even Chinese government has kind of put down a vision for the next 10 to 15 years where they want to overtake the US in these new technologies like AI, machine learning, robotics and automation, and so on. Taiwan is ahead of the US in semiconductor manufacturing. So all the semiconductor foundries have moved to Taiwan from the US. Korean companies are very good in electronics. Same as with Japanese companies in automotive and so on, right? So, of course, we find companies in these different geographies also. Now, interestingly, if we see, even the Nasdaq has some representation of international companies. So it has Chinese companies like Baidu and JD.com. It has some companies from Australia, Netherlands, and so on. But one aspect that people are always wary about is the higher volatility in emerging markets and the kind of the governance concerns, right? So those aspects also taken into account when companies are included in the Nasdaq index. And like I said, it's expected to be a stable large cap index without very high volatility. And from that point of view, we don't find too many names from these Asian countries, right? And because of that, investors can always get that exposure if they want. Now, typically, if it's these markets are more volatile than the US, for example, then they are more suited for investors who have a slightly higher risk appetite, right? And those investors can find funds that give them that exposure. So, like I mentioned, there are funds that can give China-specific exposure or Asia-specific exposure and so on. So, investors can look at those funds.
Okay, so now come to the NFO जो अभी आप Nasdaq 100 का फंड ऑफ फंड ला रहे हैं, तो उसमें भी ये बेसिकली फंड ऑफ फंड है और वो भी इंटरनेशनल फंड ऑफ फंड है, राइट? तो इसमें हमने देखा है कि आप किसी दूसरे ETF में इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहे हैं, आपने अपना ETF या इंडेक्स फंड नहीं लॉन्च किया है
जी.
Can you share your thoughts on the same? ऐसा आपने
right
डायरेक्शन?
जैसे हम जानते हैं, see, even as a AMC or as fund managers, we have two options. So one is we can follow the active style of investing or the passive style of investing. And in the active style of investing, one is as fund managers, we have to put in that effort to find companies or invest in international companies. Second is there are some intermediaries involved on the transactions front. So operationally, it is more intensive, right? Whereas on the passive side, there's already, for example, a Nasdaq ETF that is available. So the process becomes more streamlined. The costs are lower as there are no intermediaries in between. So operational costs are lower, right? From a fund manager's point of view, it also becomes much more simpler, right? So given these different aspects, it makes life simple both for us as an AMC as well as for investors. Given the lower cost, streamlined process, the higher transparency in terms of knowing what the underlying investments are in that ETF or index fund, right? So that's why we preferred to launch a Nasdaq 100 fund of fund, so that investors, the domestic investors, can just invest in the fund of fund in rupees, and the fund of fund will invest in a Nasdaq ETF or an index fund. So the investors know what they are getting, their costs are lower, and when they want to redeem, they just redeem their fund of fund units in INR, essentially. So it makes life simple for everyone. It lowers the cost, and that's why we think that it's a better alternative for investors.
I think हमने last 30-35 minutes, 40 minutes में हमने क्यों करना चाहिए इसके बारे में बात किया. We made points why one should look at having the international exposure. Can you the entire discussion will not get complete if you are not touching the risk part.
Right?
In next coming 3-4 years, 5 years, any fundamental changes or any things you are watching which one should be well aware about that, if at all, if you are tracking such events.
Right. So especially if you look at the Nasdaq, like I mentioned, it's more tech and digital focused, and that's a kind of a double-edged sword, because the companies that are there, the names that we all know, these are the disruptive innovators. Like I mentioned, they are investing in their R&D, but at the same time, there are many startups who are also coming up with new products and services that can disrupt the incumbents, right? So we have seen, for example, Zoom has come out of nowhere over the past year and a half, right? And it has overtaken or taken business from the incumbents. And that's the same thing we are seeing in different segments, whether it's in e-commerce, payments, AI, ML, and so on, right? So these companies have to keep on. So it's like almost running on a treadmill. Like the companies that are the incumbents that are there, they have to invest in R&D just to maintain their position and also try and move forward, right? Otherwise, they will get disrupted. So we keep on tracking what are the developments that are happening globally in the technology digital space. Whether there are some new companies that can come that can disrupt the business of the incumbents. That is number one. The second disruption that can happen is because of regulations. So we have seen in the news that the US policymakers are looking closely at all the tech companies, right? In terms of their business model, whether they have a monopoly and so on. So that you would have read in the news that policymakers may look at breaking up some of these companies and so on. So as of now, the risk is low, but that regulatory risk is always there. And the third development, of course, like I mentioned, is the macroeconomic developments regarding the economic growth, inflation, interest rates, which impact all companies, but especially the tech companies, like I mentioned. The established companies are less impacted. The smaller names or the more innovative companies which have the cash flows more out into the future, they get more impacted, right? So we are tracking all these factors. And also the last point was on the tax rates, like I mentioned. So the US president is talking about increasing the corporate tax rate in the US. And recently you must have read that about 150 countries have come together to raise the tax, have a global minimum tax rate. Although these will have a minor impact. Like we don't expect the impact to be more than 3-4% of the earnings of these companies. But this is also something we are tracking.
Vinodji, one more question on in terms of the starting of your introduction. When you say diversification, you also said currency diversification. Like we have seen in last 10-20 years, currency have depreciated close to around 3%, 4% every year. What is your outlook on the USD INR for next 3-5 years?
Yeah. So, like you correctly mentioned, INR has been depreciating at about 2.5-3% a year over the past decade. And we expect that trend to continue. India has to maintain its competitive position versus other countries when it comes to exports and so on, right? So we see this trend continuing. We should see even over the next 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, INR is likely to depreciate at the same 2.5-3% a year. It may not happen linearly, but on average, that is what is expected. So for investors, going back to the first example that you gave, who envisage some expense in US dollar terms in the future, or who just want to diversify their portfolios, it makes sense to get some international exposure.
So that education is a clear trend. It might happen that my younger generation or my previous generation, the kids are going for a higher education. But current what I'm seeing, people are talking about doing their 12th or maybe a graduation itself from an international.
Yes, right.
That is getting fast. So that is a clear-cut trend, and no one wants to compromise on that.
Correct.
Okay, last my question, and then probably I'll hand over to Abhishek. So if any Q&A would be there, I'm sure Abhishek can take care. My last question is to you. What percentage of portfolio one should have international as an international allocations? And right. What is the minimum time horizon one can look for? Below that, one should not look for as an allocation.
Sure. So, we recommend that typically, an investor's portfolio at a minimum should have domestic equity, international equity, fixed income, and gold. And many investors also have real estate as part of their portfolio. But I would include that in this discussion. And if we look at a well-balanced portfolio, irrespective of whether you are a high risk, medium risk, or low risk investor, the way to think about it is, of the equity allocation, you can have 10 to 15% to international equities essentially, right? So for example, an aggressive investor, let's say today, if they have 70% allocation to equities, around 10 to 15% of that should be to international. If a medium risk investor has, let's say, around 45 to 50% allocation to equities, again 10 to 15% of that should be to international. And same thing for a conservative investor. So that's the best way to think about it. And of course, from a time horizon, whether it's domestic equities or international equities, the recommended time horizon is 3 to 5 years. That because the business cycle itself typically lasts for that time period, right? So if one invests now and tries to exit, let's say in 1 year or 2 years, or even let's say 3 years, then you don't see that complete business cycle and your returns may not be optimal. So that's why we recommend at least a 3 to 5 year time horizon so that you can see the complete business cycle and get the expected returns.
Thank you, Vinodji. I think I'll appreciate Abhishek can come and take the questions.
Thank you, Anuj.
Both very, very interesting, very engrossing sort of discussion. And I think both of you have brought out some very interesting points on first of all, why is it important to invest in international assets? एक जो आपका एग्जाम्पल था अनुज जी, आपके पर्सनल फैमिली से एग्जाम्पल, एंड आई थिंक ये सबसे बड़ा यूज केस है हमारे नई जनरेशन के लिए, जो कि इच्छुक है कि बाहर जाके पढ़ें या फिर इंटरनेशनल एक्सपोजर मिले, कि अगर आपका एम्बिशन है कि आज से 10 साल 15 साल मे बी इवन 5 इयर्स के अंदर में भी अगर आपको बाहर जाके करना है, तो करेंसी को, जो करेंसी वाला जो पॉइंट विनोद जी ने बताया कि 2 से 3% का एनुअल डिप्रिसिएशन हो सकता है ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, दो इट्स नॉट लीनियर, हो सकता है किसी साल इंडियन करेंसी एप्रिशिएट करे, लेकिन ऑन द लॉन्गर एंड इंडियन करेंसी डेप्रिशिएटिंग बायस रखती है. तो इट्स बेटर कि आपके पास डॉलर एसेट्स हो एटलीस्ट कुछ परसेंटेज आपके पोर्टफोलियो में. एंड द फैक्ट कि जो कि विनोद ने हाईलाइट किया कि पिछले 15-20 साल के अंदर में भी अगर आप देखेंगे तो ऐसा नहीं है कि इंडियन मार्केट और यूएस मार्केट और या ग्लोबल मार्केट सेम साल में ऊपर और सेम साल में नीचे जाते हैं. अलग अलग साल के अंदर में अलग अलग लीडर्स रहते हैं. तो इट्स बेटर कि थोड़ा सा डाइवर्सिफिकेशन वहां पे भी हो. आई थिंक वन ऑफ द पॉइंट्स व्हिच really appealed to me was about the sectoral or thematic diversification. कई बार हम अप्रिशिएट शायद नहीं करते इस बात को कि इंडियन मार्केट में आपके पास फाइनेंशियल्स एंड वर्ल्ड क्लास फाइनेंशियल कंपनीज अवेलेबल हैं, ओवरवेट फाइनेंशियल्स हैं हम लोग बाय डिफॉल्ट. नैस्डैक जैसे थीम के अंदर में जो कि नॉन फाइनेंशियल इंडेक्स है, इज एक्चुअली गिविंग यू डाइवर्सिफिकेशन, अ बैलेंस ऑफ सेक्टर्स इन योर पोर्टफोलियो. हाई ग्रोथ भी मिल रहा है, कैश फ्लो अर्निंग्स मिल रहा है, हाई ईएसजी यानी कि हाई कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस, हाई सस्टेनेबिलिटी मिल रही है, एंड येट यू आर गेटिंग अ बैलेंस. तो बजाय अपने आप को ज्यादा रिस्क की तरफ जाते हुए आप फिर भी हाई ग्रोथ, अपने हाई परफॉर्मेंस अपने पोर्टफोलियो में कैप्चर कर पाते हैं, जो कि वी हैव ऑलरेडी सीन एंड श्योर प्रेजेंटेशन में भी देख सकेंगे कि डॉलर टर्म्स के अंदर में देखिए या रूपी टर्म्स में देखिए, द इंडेक्स और द ग्लोबल मार्केट इंडेक्स लाइक नैस्डैक is miles ahead of the Indian index. So obviously there is much stronger reason to invest in a fund like Nasdaq, and especially at this stage where Indian markets are also seemingly valued or maybe heated. So diversification, even if at a stretch level or at a fair level, if you look at as Vinod pointed out, नॉर्मलाइज अगर आपको करना है तो फॉरवर्ड आपको अर्निंग्स देखना पड़ेगा, फॉरवर्ड पीए आपको देखना पड़ेगा. उसके हिसाब से अगर डाइवर्सिफिकेशन करते हैं कंट्री का तो बहुत अच्छा आइडिया है. लेट मी जस्ट क्विकली टेक अप सम क्वेश्चंस जो हमारे को यहाँ पे मिले हैं. पहला क्वेश्चन है, व्हाट आर द रिस्क ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग इन इंटरनेशनल मार्केट वाया अ म्यूचुअल फंड एंड what are the capital gains? Are index and ETF of international market listed on NSE or any other exchange in India? अनूप जी, आप मेरे ख्याल से आप ये वाला पॉइंट आंसर कर पाएंगे कि या either of you two can take this. What are the risks of investing in international market via mutual fund and the capital gains tax on this? And are index or ETFs of international market listed on NSE or any other exchange in India? अनूप जी?
Yeah. So एक तो रिस्क हमें ये देखना चाहिए जब हम कहीं पे भी मान के चलो, इफ आई गिव यू इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट, अगर हम कोई स्कीम लेते हैं तो हमें ये देखना चाहिए कि स्कीम का क्या कंपोजिशन है, लाइक सो आई थिंक उसका क्या बेंचमार्क है, वो एक चीज हमें थोड़ी सी देखनी चाहिए। कोई भी स्कीम हम लेते हैं, जैसे वी हैव अ 45 स्कीम and different schemes have a different benchmark altogether. So here you should exactly clearly know that what benchmarks currently having. One scheme it shows that it's a global fund, but in a US it has only 37%, like that sort of allocation. One scheme has where it has a small cap as a benchmark. So when you are taking so it's like पहले जैसे SEBI की क्लासिफिकेशन नहीं थी, उस टाइम पे हम देखते थे कि लार्ज कैप फंड में भी 40% स्मॉल कैप। सो यू आर गिविंग अ लार्ज कैप फंड बट अंदर लार्ज कैप नहीं है, अंदर स्मॉल कैप भी आ रहा है। सो दो सॉर्ट ऑफ रिस्क वन कैन टेक केयर। नाउ ऑन अ टैक्सेशन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, ऑब्वियसली दीज आर लाइक अ फंड ऑफ फंड, सो इट ट्रीटेड एज अ डेट टैक्सेशन what it comes. So after 3 years obviously you get a debt taxation.
तो जी, जो आपने पहला पॉइंट बोला, क्या उसका ऐसा भी मतलब निकाल सकते हैं कि या उसका ऐसा भी निष्कर्ष निकाल सकते हैं कि क्योंकि एक्टिव मैनेजर्स जो बाहर बैठे हैं उनके फंड्स के अंदर में बेंचमार्क की क्लैरिटी नहीं है या पोर्टफोलियो की क्लैरिटी नहीं है, जैसा कि विनोद ने भी पॉइंट आउट किया था कि बहुत सारी कंपनीज हमको मालूम ही नहीं है एक्टिव फंड्स में कि कोई छोटी मोटी कंपनी है, यूरोप के किसी ईस्ट यूरोप के देश की कोई कंपनी आ जाती है, कोई एशियन कंपनी कोई आ जाती है हाई वॉलेटिलिटी वाली, इलिक्विड करेंसी वाली। तो अगर हम इंडेक्स देखें तो एक लार्ज कैप इंडेक्स जैसे नैस्डैक, ऐसा अप्रोच लेना बेहतर है रादर देन लुकिंग एट, अगर इंटरनेशनल एक्सपोजर ले ही रहे हैं तो।
करेक्ट, yeah, I agree with you, and that's the precise point which I wanted to make. When you are buying a Nasdaq, you exactly know there are the three sectors which are technology, consumer discretionary, and communication. These are the three sectors are available. You exactly know which companies are there, so there is no ambiguity in that part. But if you buy active funds, basically, and that's where the underlying the portfolio, it might confuse, and hence that one can be more active on.
Fantastic. Second question है, are index or ETF of international market listed on NSE or any other exchange in India? I think at this point in time अभी NSE का proposal है कि कुछ कंपनीज को इंडिया लाके लिस्ट करवाएगा, लेकिन ये अभी तक एक्टिवेट नहीं हुआ है। आई थिंक इट्स अ ब्रिलियंट मूव। जैसे ये होएगा, आई थिंक और ज्यादा विजिबिलिटी बढ़ेगी। आई थिंक द सेम टॉप कंपनीज जो कि हम एक इंडेक्स Nasdaq 100 के थ्रू कैप्चर करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, बहुत सारी कंपनीज शायद यहाँ पे भी हमारे को मिलेंगी, एंड देयर मे बी अ बेटर एक्सेस टू दीज कंपनीज इन इंडिया आल्सो। अगला क्वेश्चन है, व्हाट इज द प्राइस टू अर्निंग रेशियो ऑफ Nasdaq? Vinod, if you can maybe comment on this, I don't have the exact number, but you can maybe provide a view on the valuations aspect of Nasdaq.
Yeah, like I mentioned, see the headline valuations are elevated for all indices. Even the Nasdaq P is about 25 plus. But like I also mentioned earlier, it doesn't give the right representation. And of course, it's like, almost a 30-35% premium to its long-term average. But that is not the right representation. It's just a data point that one needs to track at this point.
But relative to, if you compare Indian consumer discretionary or other companies versus that company, our P is north of 60, 70, some of the 100. And these are the companies who are the history of having 100 years or more than 100 years and are available for 25 P.
Yeah.
In that context, I still feel that they have a long history. They have a better rating than the government of India also in terms of their bond market. And hence, I personally feel, obviously, when we look at all these data long-term averages, it looks, but 25 doesn't look that stretchy. I hope.
Fantastic insight. Fantastic insight. I think this credit rating of equities is a very, very strong point. And it's pertinent कि while हमारा देश काफी सक्षम हो गया है, काफी strong हो गया economy wise, markets have become very deep and foreign participation has gone up significantly. लेकिन fact is कि हमारी credit rating अभी भी जंग के एक ही level ऊपर है. And many of these companies, most of these companies, in fact, have much better credit rating than our economy itself. So it it's actually relevant that we buy the cleanest balance sheets. Companies जिनका quarterly P&L शायद बहुत सारे देशों के GDP से ज्यादा है. So very important point, अनुज जी. मैं सारे ऑडियंस को एक बार याद दिला दूं, we are in Q&A session. If you have any questions, you can please type it in the Q&A box and we can just immediately take it up. I have one question here and maybe a slide to show as well alongside. And if Vinod, you can help comment on this. This is a comparison of the global market versus where here we are taking MSCI World itself, comparing it with Nasdaq 100. It seems that there is a consistent outperformance of Nasdaq over MSCI World. Clearly, हमारे को past track record देख के नहीं सिर्फ invest करना चाहिए, but of course it does provide a cue कि कुछ तो यहाँ पे different है, कुछ तो यहाँ पे हो रहा है. ऐसा कैसे है कि दोनों के दोनों underlying जो यूनिवर्स है ग्लोबल होने के बावजूद इतना सिग्निफिकेंट आउट परफॉर्मेंस आ रहा है Nasdaq वर्सेस MSCI वर्ल्ड. Does it also mean that there is a much higher risk as well in Nasdaq versus a global index like MSCI world?
Right. So, Abhishek, if there is one thing I'm certain about over the next decade, it is that technology will be the biggest disruptor essentially, and that is what we have seen over the past decade also, which is reflected in these charts, right? So what has happened is, as the tech companies are more innovative, they're investing more in R&D, they have grown their business, they have invented new segments, they have taken business from some of the traditional companies, right? So it's no wonder that their top lines are increasing, profitability has been increasing, and the returns are also higher, right? Now, and as you correctly pointed out, returns is one aspect. We have to look at the risk also. Now, from a risk standpoint, if we see the Nasdaq especially, it has a higher allocation to the tech and digital space, but at the same time, it is balanced also. So it has consumer discretionary, it has telecom, it has a bit of healthcare, and so on, right? So if I look at the next 5 to 10 years, and if my expectation is that broadly that tech will be a beneficiary and it will disrupt other sectors, then I would expect this trend to continue. So from that angle, I feel that the risk could be lower for tech than for other sectors. And of course, like we discussed, it is not as closely tied to the economic cycles like the other sectors. So the volatility is also lower. So overall, I would feel that the risk-adjusted returns for the Nasdaq especially and the broader tech sector will be higher than for the other sectors as such.
I second to what Vinodji said, and I can give my personal experience. I'm running a company and I have a technology team in my, we have a department. And if I look back last 13 years, technology headcounts have increased, technology wage base has been increased, and the reliance on technology is completely there. Any small error in the technology and the entire company can get halt in terms of as an operation. All my other department, operational department or account department, the number of team members may have come down. Wage bill may not have grown as fast as what the technology have grown. And I cannot redeem from the technology today. If tomorrow, if I have to redeem from the technology, the business collapse will happen, and the reliance on technology just going. So what Vinodji is saying in terms of, and that's where I'm very bullish, technology I think is as good as like a FMCG for anything.
फैंटास्टिक. इसी पॉइंट के ऊपर में एक सवाल आ रहा है अनुज जी. हरजीत ने पूछा है, हाउ वुड Nasdaq returns compare with Indian IT index? While we may not have the exact numbers in hand, if you have numbers with you, if you can share some perspective on that, it will be great. But हम लोग बात कर रहे थे Nasdaq की technology is a big differentiator, it's a big disruptor, and disruption itself has clearly paid out in the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years already. क्या इंडियन आईटी के अंदर में इन्वेस्ट करने का सेंस नहीं है क्या? बाय द वे, फॉर ऑल हु आर लॉग्ड इन, आई शुड आल्सो पॉइंट आउट दैट वी आर शॉर्टली आल्सो लॉन्चिंग एन आईटी ETF also, but it's a very relevant point कि IT companies, Indian IT companies are also known to be world class. How will it compare with the Nasdaq, and how should one look at allocating to both these segments? Clearly, there are big differentiation. There are themes, there are sectors, there are businesses which are not available with the IT companies in India also. But a more nuanced view, if you can share on this.
So in tech broadly, there are two categories of companies. One is what we call the product companies, and the other are the services companies. And clearly, as we all know, the strength of the Indian IT companies so far has been on the services front, right? Although some have tried to develop products, but it's still very small when compared to the overall business and the top line and profitability also, right? So investing in the Indian IT index gives us exposure only to one aspect of the whole tech digital space. Although of course IT index also has some other names now, like Apple, InfoEdge, and so on, which can be called digital companies, but still they are small in the overall context of things. And if we look at the Nasdaq 100 index, and I think Abhishek, you would have that slide where it shows the themes that are included in the Nasdaq index. I mean, you can see the broad diversity of the themes that are captured in the Nasdaq index. Which is there on the screen. For example, I mean, you have AI, machine learning, you have robotics, you have cyber security, you will have cryptocurrencies coming in, you have e-commerce, semiconductors, right? It's like the tech digital space is a very broad space, and the Nasdaq 100 gives you that exposure. And of course, at the same time, you should also invest in the Indian IT companies. That gives a more kind of a niche exposure. And if you look at the track record, right, like we discussed, the Nasdaq over the past decade has given a 25% CAGR return in rupee terms. The Indian IT index, I don't think, has given that kind of return. I mean, maybe over the last couple of years, the returns have been good, so the overall return would be a bit higher now. But I think the Nasdaq has handily outperformed the Indian IT index, and you can see the reason why.
There is another question. Darshan had raised his hand. Darshan, I think your question is already answered. What you had asked, where do you see Nasdaq and Indian market down 3 to 5 years? Loganathan is asking, can you please compare with a pure US equity fund? Maybe a recap of versus a S&P. How would it compare? If you could just share a view.
Yeah. So, for example, if you look at the S&P 500 index, it has 500 companies that cover all aspects of the economy, right? So, for example, if we compare the technology exposure to the tech or digital space, Nasdaq has around 50% plus exposure, right? Whereas S&P may have, let's say, 15 to 20% exposure, right? To consumer durables, the Nasdaq has around 22%. S&P may have similar, right? But S&P will have higher exposure to the industrials and materials, energy companies, utility companies, financial companies, and so on, which don't find much exposure in the Nasdaq. And that is the difference. So the S&P 500 is much more closely tied to the US economic cycle, whereas the Nasdaq gives you an exposure which is not as closely tied. So the US economy, for example, last year, like we saw, right, the US economy didn't do that well, or the global economy also didn't do that well. But the tech companies did very well. They actually benefited from the pandemic, right? So it kind of gives you that diversification, which is not closely tied to how the underlying economy is doing.
Fantastic. The next question is, how is Nasdaq 100 FOF different from Nasdaq 100 ETF? Maybe I can take this. Harshal, Nasdaq 100 FOF is investing in a Nasdaq 100 ETF only. The idea of launching an FOF was, as Vinod had pointed out, to avoid complications of cross-border transaction, multiple transactions, timing issues, intermediaries, etc., intermediary costs, etc. Here in an FOF, you are getting exposure to one of the largest Nasdaq 100 ETFs in the world. Very, because of economy of scale, it comes at a very low cost to investors here in India. Rather than investing directly in the same Nasdaq 100 companies and listing with a significantly higher bid-ask ratio, bid-ask price as an ETF here in the markets. That's a big difference. Also, because of the FOF format, you have a regular plan. Our advisors can also take this to investors, help them participate, and everybody can, kind of benefit from it. The next question is, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock as well, is minimum investment and SIP available in the fund? Yes, the fund has an SIP available. SIP, SWP, STP, all the three options are available. Minimum investment amount is 5,000. In an SIP, it is 500 rupees only. You can participate through lump sums. You can participate through SIP. If there is one more question, yes, there's one more question. Are there no Indian IT product companies vis-a-vis US IT companies? We'll take this as the last question. Vinod, you want to respond to this one? Are there no Indian IT product companies vis-a-vis US IT companies?
So there are, like we know some of the names that have gotten listed in recent times. I mean, you have InfoEdge, you have Apple, you have IndiaMart, and over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see more companies, getting listed. But if you see the diversity of the themes that are there on the slide that is being projected right now, right? We don't have Indian companies in these segments currently. We may have them going forward, but as of now, we don't have Indian companies in these segments. And that's why to get exposure to these themes and to the innovative companies in these segments, we need to invest, for example, in the NASDAQ 100.
Again, these companies are not comparable to the companies like Google or Apple or Microsoft. These are
the scale is entirely different.
Global name, so I think the scale, the size, and the kind of innovations, India, most of the company, you take Infosys or a TCS, these are like a household name in India, but they are still service-oriented company, as Vinod said. They never come out with any product. So there will be always, they will do well, but with the lag effect. Who will do better and who will have that market share? Obviously, the disruptor. And US is the home of the innovation. I think one should not.
A simple framework I'd like to suggest for investors is just think about it in our own lives, right? Like what has happened over the past year and a half, what you can expect over the next year and a half, example, which Indian product company has had an impact on your life versus which of these global companies has had an impact on your lives, right? And you will know the answer.
It's a very basic common, even if you apply this common sense, if this we would have applied in the 20 years, 30 years before, we would have been reached. We just need to do the same things now. And it has worked well.
Yeah, I think as the age-old adage goes, buy the stock of the company जिसका product consume करेंगे rather than जिसको आप सिर्फ देखेंगे. So with this, I think we've already crossed our timeline. We are actually way over. I would like to thank both our panelists, Anup Bhaiya and Vinod Bhatt. Thank you for a fantastic conversation, very, very enriching. I hope our participants, our audience had a good time. They had a lot of points to take away, and this will enthuse them to take international exposure in their portfolios, advise for your investors, building that that 10 to 15% exposure as Vinod suggested in the portfolios. Whether it's a conservative, aggressive, or a moderate investor, one needs to have some measure of exposure. And beginning from a long-standing, one of the largest indexes, a NASDAQ 100, is perhaps a good idea. Investing through an FOF, you're getting exposure to one of the most liquid indexes, one of the most liquid ETFs. You get exposure to the underlying index at a minuscule price. It's a great time to start international investing. We'll be happy to respond to any other queries. If you have, please send it to us through your relationship managers or write into us. Thank you both panelists for all your inputs and sharing your perspective here. Happy investing.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिमों के अधीन है। स्कीम संबंधी सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।